to share God's Word. I enjoyed cutting wood in the timber, really enjoyed that timber. We kept a path open all the way around it and walked that path many times. We hunted mushrooms in the timber. Dorothy had never picked a mushroom. I think she'd seen them, but never had picked them. So we were back there one day during mushroom season, and I left her in one of the areas and I went on my way. After a while, I heard this little voice through the timber, "I found one!" And that was a new experience. First time she ever found mushroom. That really caught on. Then when she prepared them and we ate them and we really got into it. Now we don't know where to go to look for mushrooms. We live in an apartment. As far as the future is concerned, I've had a verse always in my time here for this congregation. It is Luke 12:32, where we read, "Fear not, little flock, for the Father is pleased to give you the kingdom." We love you people. God loves you. And keep Jesus front and center, because he is the way, the only way, the truth, and the life. May God bless you.
Thank you, Herb. One of the many joys that I have had while we've been here was getting to meet Herb. I have enjoyed that so much, and I'm not going to get fired, so I'm just going to go ahead. This is one thing that came to my mind, because Herb knows how to draw a laugh, doesn't he? Back in my former life, I'd tell the boys at the sale barn when they thought they were being funny, "I do the humor around here." But I can't match you, Herb. Thank you for that. Part of our looking back, Peter Graber, better known as Junior Graber to many of you, was born and raised and died in this church. And music was very important to Peter. And we are blessed to have a recording of Peter in his later years singing "My God and I." And so we have a little special music now, Peter.
My God and I go in the field together. We walk and talk as good friends should and do. We clasp our hands, our voices ring with laughter. My God and I walk through the meadow's hue. We clasp our hands, our voices ring with laughter. My God and I walk through the meadow's hue. He tells me of the years that went before me, when heavenly plans were made for me to be. When all we had, a dream of dim conception, to come to life, earth's goodness glory see. When all was but a dream of dim conception, to come to life, earth's verdant glory see. My God and I will go for aye together. We'll walk and talk, and just as great friends do. This earth will pass, and with it common trifles, but God and I will go unendingly. This earth will pass, and with it common trifles, but God and I will go unendingly.
From 2008 through 2013, Larry and Elva Evers was our pastors here. And things that I look back and reflect on is that Larry really enjoyed Bible studies. I think he could have a Bible study twice a day. I think he just loved them that much. He did challenge us to be more caring. I think that was one of his goals here. One of the things I remember, he always wore can hats. And people didn't wear can hats around here. They were baseball caps, but he always wore those can hats. And Elva, I think, enjoyed her garden, and Larry did too. And I couldn't figure out, he put stacks of tires in his garden. Why would anybody put stacks of tires in their garden? Well, he put his sweet potatoes in there, and then when he went to dig them, he just peeled the tires off. He didn't have to dig them. I thought that was a pretty neat thing. So also instrumental in their work here was starting game night, and we've kind of turned it over to Art and Carmen Schooley now. So it's still going strong. So glad to have you back.
It's indeed a pleasure to be here. May God bless you as you go on into the future. Of course, we are looking back, but we don't look back just for the sake of looking back. We look back to plan a little bit about what's going to come next. It was nice that you had Peter singing just before I'm speaking. The Sunday that I came here to candidate, he sang on that Sunday. He sang "His Eye is on the Sparrow," and I appreciated his singing. Well, few congregations last this long. If you get to Europe, a lot of buildings have lasted this long, but if you attend a Sunday morning service there's often not many people there, fewer than what are often here as far as that goes. So you're to be congratulated on that. Also, you're to be congratulated on having people who can put together a big wing-ding like what you put together. This is quite the weekend. You've done very well. You have a fitting celebration. You have a fitting verse, as we read before. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. I don't know how one determines how long a generation is, but how many generations is 150 years? I don't know just what that would be. But a lot of people, a lot of generations. And so we look at those and honor that. And I want to honor you for putting this celebration together. And not just putting together a celebration, but putting together a time of honoring God for what has been done here. I want to talk this morning about gifts. Gifts are important to every congregation. Every congregation needs gifts. The Bible says a lot about spiritual gifts. This congregation has and I'm sure had in the past, did while I was here, I know, and I suppose in the history before that also, this congregation was a well-gifted congregation. As we think about gifts, there are various lists in the Bible that talk about gifts, and I don't want to go into detail on these, but I want to just skim over what some of them have to say. In 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about administration and helps, discernment, wisdom, prophecy, and others. Romans 12 talks about exhortation, leadership, mercy, and again, others. Ephesians 4 talks about apostles, evangelism, and again, others. I just want you to get an idea about gifts. Various other gifts that are listed various places, and I'm not sure that everybody would see all of these as gifts, but they're given that way in the Bible. Celibacy, hospitality, martyrdom, being a missionary, and voluntary poverty. Do we think of those as gifts? Well, they're listed in the Bible as being gifts. Paul wrote about many of those gifts. He wrote about many of those, and he also was a very gifted person. If we'd list all those gifts that I just summarized and put them all together, there would be about 24 gifts. But there is another passage that Paul wrote that I want us to think about this morning. And I'm not mentioning where it is yet because I'll get to that shortly. But in this other list where he mentions gifts, there's some 29 gifts that he himself has that he lists in this other chapter in the Bible. 29 gifts that he says he himself has. Now, don't take this wrong, and forgive me if you think you maybe should, but I want to say that those 29 gifts that he mentions in that place, I have more gifts than that. Now just hang on. Don't throw me out yet. But those were important gifts to Paul, and these gifts that I'm talking about that I have are important to me. Larry will show those on the screen now. There's my gifts. Thank you. Thank you for being a gift to me. Am I a gifted person? Yes, because of that. So this morning, mostly, I don't have stories to tell, but I just want to point out that you are gifts to me, all of you. As you look at your future, I pray that you also will be a friend to those needing a friend. As we go into the modern world today, a world that's more and more controlled and cluttered with technology, the personal touch is missing. People need a personal touch. And I was thinking about that. Remember the ad some time ago, reach out and touch someone? I think that's needed more now than it was in the 80s when that ad was on the TV. But I want to thank you for allowing me to reach out and touch you. And thank you for reaching out and touching me. I would like to sit down with each of you and thank you personally for being a gift to me. We won't take that time. Perhaps I can to some of you. But again, see how many gifts I have. And I thank you for that. May God bless you as you continue on your way.
A song now. It's a well-known song. It's the Church in the Wildwoods, a little church. But please listen to the words because we've changed some words to have a little Eicher twist to it. So.
There's a church on a hill by the wildwoods, no lovelier spot in the dale. No place is so dear to my childhood as a little white church in the vale. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the come, come to the church in the no spot is so dear to my childhood as the little white church in the vale. Oh, come to the church in the wildwood, to the trees where the wildflowers galore, where the 5 acres call to the children. Hurry up, now it's time to explore. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the come to the church in the no spot is so dear to my childhood as a little white church in the dale. As we honor our past years of history, we celebrate a future so bright. With God's help, we will make a difference, spread God's word and share His light. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the come to the church in the no spot is so dear to my childhood as a little white church in the vale.
At this time, we're going to invite Pastor Bob Hartzler to talk to us a little bit. I think you probably know Bob very well. Bob and Phyllis have served Mennonite churches and their congregations for a good number of years. Bob served as an interim pastor here at Eicher following Larry and Elva's retirement. And he also served as a mentor for Pastor Dave early on. I think you probably know that the role of an interim pastor is to thoughtfully plan to keep the regular happenings of the congregation going and to prepare the group for the new leadership that's coming. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Can carry on, continue things as they are, and kind of get the group ready for the new guy, okay? Let's stop and make kind of a loose comparison this morning. I'm going to divert just a little bit here. Let's say that you folks sitting out there in the pews are our school class, and the pastor is the teacher. You come to class one morning, and the regular teacher's gone, and a substitute is sitting at the desk. Now, I don't know about you all and your behaviors when you had substitute teachers, but when that happened for me and my friends, total mayhem. We reverted back to little savages. I could tell stories for hours, and I'm sure I've still got teachers shaking their heads after 40, 50 years. Well, I think you get the idea. You can imagine what a challenging role an interim pastor could have. Bob accepted the role of an interim pastor with style and grace. He provided excellent leadership for our little group during that year. Once Dave accepted the call to lead this church, Bob stepped into the background but continued his leadership as a mentor for Dave that first year. Good leadership makes all the difference. As a congregation, we saw the transition as seamless and smooth as silk. And we've got good people sitting in the pews, but we had a good leader at the helm, and we thank you for that. Welcome to the pulpit.
I remember very distinctly the first time I preached a sermon at Eicher. June 10, 1965. Any of you know what happened that day? Palm Sunday tornadoes. And I was teaching some young men in a class in the north balcony in the old Sugar Creek Church, first hour. Came here to preach the sermon in the second hour, and I remember getting out of the car, and the air was almost like electricity. And I didn't know what it meant. But later in the day, we learned that there were 47 tornadoes between here and eastern Ohio, and 271 people lost their lives. That's my memory of the first sermon here. There were probably people from the Eicher congregation who went to clean up. Anyone remember that? Did you help clean up those? Okay. Yeah. All right. I was only here for 6 months, from July till December of 2013, so my speech should be shorter, and I'm sure it will be. I enjoyed working with the Eicher Church people, small in number, but they get it done. They switch from one position to another, and their gifts are used in that way, and it's amazing what this small congregation gets done. I did a little historical research. Most of it came from Melvin Gingrich's book, Mennonites in Iowa. And there were some issues that led what was once one group of Amish Mennonites from eastern Jefferson County to northern Henry County and southern Washington County. In the 1840s and 50s, people were emigrating, and some came from Alsace in France, from Ohio, Ontario, and they settled in this space that I just described. There were no church buildings, so they were meeting in houses or barns. Finally, Eicher decided that this was enough, and they built a church. 1868, I think, was the first one. Can you imagine riding an ox cart from Lockridge to Noble to go to church? I mean, that would test your commitment, wouldn't it? Yeah. It didn't make much sense. So Eicher put up a building in 1868, and Sugar Creek, which represented the southern part of the community, followed 3 years later in 1871. Why did they separate into two distinct congregations? Each had its building. Well, Melvin Gingrich said, and obviously the first reason was they had to go 15 miles to church before automobiles. And so the distance factor was certainly a part of it. Secondly, there was some conflict about the use of alcoholic beverages. Remember, these people came from France and were accustomed to making their own, probably. We don't know. That's speculation on my part. But anyways, Benjamin Eicher was really against the use of alcoholic beverages, and he let it be known. He also believed that buttons were okay. And the buttons didn't show up on the but the history tells us that Benjamin was something of a progressive, and he made that change and saw the congregation through it. Another issue was windows. What is questionable about windows? I'll tell you, your windows here in the church would not have passed. There was conflict in the community about how you decorate your windows. I don't know if there were maybe flower boxes on the sill or something like that. I'm not sure, but it was an issue. And of course, the community was growing, and the size indicated that 2 meeting places made sense. So we have, how far do we have to go to church? What about people who use alcohol and those who don't? How about the conservatives who still use hook and eyes and not buttons? And the windows. See, I think that dressing up your windows was kind of seen as a kind of pride. And we are humble people, right? Well, maybe. I told Phyllis recently, after reading this and looking at those 5 things which were issues for the people that lived here, the last decade, the United Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church and the Mennonite Church has spent a lot of time talking about sex. These issues, I'd rather work with them, I think.
Man, I can't catch a break, can I? Well, I think I can still say I'm the guy you've been waiting for, because I'm last. There's nobody coming after me. What a time this is for us to be honoring the past and considering how it is we will celebrate the future. What a blessing it is to have these former pastors with us to remember and reflect on their time serving here. What a unique opportunity for me as the pastor now to pay attention, to gain wisdom, to seek wisdom from those who have stood in this pulpit before. What a unique opportunity for this church to be able to just pause for a moment in life to do this event and commemorate the 150 years, the significance of being a part of something that has survived, thrived for that long. As I thought about that, I thought about perspective. We need a little perspective. And so I wondered what was going on in 1868. Andrew Johnson was president. We had the Civil War. Lincoln